Hey my friend, welcome to Lion's Mane Media, Jonah here. How many characters and stories have introduced themselves as being the one your parents warned you about? One reason for this is probably that the introduction pretty much writes itself, and now we have an easily imagined character that can either influence another or be influenced by another. And we've also probably all been told that we should avoid certain people for various reasons. I mean, my parents did too. Yet, there was one type of behavior they told me to be very watchful of. That isn't really part of the general list. For a bit of background, my parents have been in ministry for a long time, and are ordained, so technically I could be considered some sort of preacher still. But it's the ministry part where this really comes from. The people my parents warned me about were those who spend most of their time attacking other ministries. And while it sounds really specific, the more that I've seen, the more I realize just how applicable it is. In this age of social media, it's pretty much never been easier to put whatever we want to say into the public square, at least so to speak. Because like most tools, the internet and social media is actually neutral in a way. It all depends on what the user is using it for. We have so many ways to learn, understand, and connect, all at the tips of our fingers. Yet, that same tool can also be used for slandering and isolating others. I remember this video that came across my feed one day, and the thumbnail has just kind of stuck with me as an example of how some accusations don't hold water after you give it some thought. It was this guy saying something about being either wary of a prominent preacher or outright just saying the preacher was a false teacher, and then listing his reasons. And while the first few may have been like, yeah, there may be an issue there, it was the last one that made me stop and go, that is actually probably this guy's main problem with that preacher. Last point was that the preacher was unqualified. And as a Christian, it made me go, who really qualifies a preacher? Is it man or God? Because while I had heard of that preacher, I hadn't heard of the guy pointing the finger. So it also had all those hallmarks of someone upset that the other person is more successful than they are. Now, it could have been completely accurate. But then, I was warned to be wary of these people who just go around accusing. For Christians in particular, it's really not something we're called to do. As Jesus said in Matthew 7, the judgments we hand out will end up being how we are judged. And then follows up with the example of trying to remove dust from someone's eye while having a beam in our own. Imagine for just a second someone having this 2x4 sticking out of their eye and saying to someone else, oh, I need to just get that little piece of dust out of your eye. But then every time they're making an attempt, they're ending up whacking that other person with a 2x4. The other person probably isn't going to stay around that long. And I mean, why would they? I mean, we refer to the enemy as the accuser of the brethren. So when we are doing the same thing, what does that end up making us? Now, I'm not saying we should just pretend that everything is alright. Especially when it's not. Again, there are things that need to be confronted. But shoving it into the public square immediately, the best way to do it? I like the process Jesus describes in Matthew 18. That if there is an offense, the first step is to actually discuss it in private with the person who did the offending. And I'm pretty sure that just sending an DM to someone you disagree with is not what is being talked about as being private. It's actually about being in community with someone, having a relationship with them and trying to save it. Because who listens to someone who only ever condemns them? I know that our critics can be our best coaches, but there's a line where it's pretty much just hate and nonsense. Where, again, it's like we tend to skip that relationship part in who we have influence over. Because then, influence comes from a relationship. It doesn't come from just me saying something. It comes from actual relationship or being a voice or people knowing you. After that point is bringing in a third party, like people you would both trust, so that other people also know what's going on. And so it doesn't end up becoming a he said, she said incident. And then there comes the church, which is din, about being in community with someone. You're bringing it in front of the community you're both part of. And it's only after that, and the issue not being resolved, because if it's resolved, why would you take it further, that it would enter into the public square. Of course, again, this is a relationship-based approach. And even by the time something is public, we may not see the process that has led up to that. Which is why we need wisdom when we see these public accusations that are so common now these days. One thing we to note is, does this person do these accusations lightly? Because many people seem to live out the blame game 24/7. It's never their fault, it's always someone else who should shoulder the blame. Yet, then when it's someone who doesn't do it that often, could there actually be more to it than them just playing that blame game? Another point is that, do they treat accusations the same? What I mean by that is, do they treat an action the same no matter who it is, or do they play sides? Let some people slide because it's a benefit to their preferred cause of choice, all while going after their enemies for the exact same thing. In the end, it's kind of knowing the accuser and the accused. For example, we all have blind spots, but wouldn't there be a point of believing our friend over a stranger, or at least talking to our friend about it? And then we also have the story of the boy who tried wolf. He tells a lie 2 times, so that when the 3rd time happens, and it would be that he's telling the truth, no one believes him, and then the boy and the sheep end up getting eaten. So how long do we let someone who's lied to us continue and still believe them? This means that sometimes if we actually care about the truth, we have to be willing for it to come out, even if it is unpleasant and messy, or doesn't help our cause at all. Part of the reason I wanted to do this video is because I want to talk about behaviors more than the specific people who do them. Even there might come a time when I do have to say something. But I don't want that to be the main focus of this channel or project, because then, if I spend all my time using my platform to attack others, what do I call myself? Now, this video may have been a bit more on the spiritual side, which may not be as popular, but it made sense with the subject material. If you feel like I might have missed a point of view or have one of your own to share, feel free to share that in the comments below. And if you got value out of this video and would like to see more, please like and subscribe. And of course, since I'm still thinking about how to end these videos, let's stick with what I have. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and talk to you later.